Morning, everyone. I'm glad I've got the pre-lunch slot. So I'm Sophie Durrani. I run Haygarth. It's a creative through-the-line agency. We've got clients like Disney, Vodafone, Dairy Crest, etc. And Paul has kindly stepped in at the last minute, so we're very unrehearsed, so you'll have to bear with us. Haygarth's been working with the Organic Trade Board for about 3 years on a through-the-line campaign to promote organic food. And what we want to talk today about is how social has played a core role in the midst of a through-the-line campaign. So Paul's going to give you a little bit of background on the business challenges first, and then I'll talk to you about the campaign, and then specifically social. Paul.
Good morning. Can I just have a quick hands poll? Are there any organic consumers in the market in this room today? Okay. Oh, blimey. I'm very impressed. I was expecting a very tough audience. But pleased to welcome you on board. Thank you very much for supporting the organic food industry. The Organic Trade Board, and I sort of am your visual representation of around about 120 businesses, and we'll talk about who they are in a second, and they make up between 70 and 80%, I would say, of all the organic trade that's done in the UK, whether they're retailers, manufacturers or processors, people who own brands. And the Trade Board, our mission is basically to focus on driving growth for the organic industry, so driving consumers into making a decision to buy organic foods. And we concern ourselves with 4 areas. One is our consumers, of course, and through Sophie and Haygarth we approach those, and she will talk in detail about that. The second area is we engage with the distribution channels, because without the support of on-shelf and your retailers, there's really nothing to talk about, because you have no access to your consumer. It's very difficult to get your products out there. So our job is to create an environment where organic is maintained on the buying agendas for the various retail groups. A third area where we operate is within government. So we talk a lot to government about policies, and we try and influence them. For example, school meals. We'd like to see more organic products in there. A lot of the charities do that work, but we interface with the government, and if we have any problems, and as you are aware, there are many problems facing the food industry at the moment. The organic industry is not alone in that. But we would be a liaison point for that area, so we're able to represent the various members that make up that group, and they all have different points of view. So we try to consolidate that. And CBES is certifying bodies. Organic is a legally defined term. You can't just slap organic on a product. And the certifying bodies are responsible for ensuring the integrity of that supply chain, as well as discussing what those regulations, those rules governing the production of organic food are. How many chickens per square metre, whether cows should have free access to pasture, all of that sort of thing is discussed by that. We don't concern ourselves with that, but we represent the bodies when there is a point of conflict. And the other thing, of course, is we talk to our members, because we are a membership-led body, and they, without their support, we can do nothing. So here are our members. You'll recognise some of those, hopefully. And our idea is to bring all these members together and represent their interests in one unit, and then put it forward to our consumers. So where do we fit in as a trade board? We have certifiers over on the left. Some you may have seen, Soil Association and Organic Farmers and Growers. They're the people who go out and put stickers, so when you see an organic product, you know it's organic. We have charities who are all interested in the development of organic for whatever reason. Pan UK, Pesticides Action Network, they're interested in the quality of the food on our shelves, and we have some influence to them. Government, DEFRA, campaigners, Sustain, which is a group which includes the Soil Association, Organic Trade Board, all sorts of people, like Compassion in World Farming, all in there, all operating for better food for us as consumers. And research bodies, the Organic Research Centre. These are places where organic farming is talked about as a very historical, old-fashioned thing. Far be that from the truth. Massive industry, very highly technically astute. It's quite a different picture from what's painted in the press. And of course there's the OTB. We are all about industry growth. So, the thing that Sophie was faced with was this. First of all, lots of consumer confusion. What is organic?
I don't give my child organic food as long as I know where it's come from, and I don't give them cheap food, but I think organic is a licence to print a little bit more money personally.
Well, I've always had that kind of thing. I've never gone for anything that's been interfered with, you know, where they put something in it. And, you know, I think, no, I'll stick to what I've had all my life.
We bought a few things that were organic. I can't remember what they were now, but otherwise, no, we just buy what's about, you know. As long as it looks fresh and what have you.
I just tend to go for whatever's cheaper and easier, because I've just been a student, so I'd rather just eat whatever's available at the cheapest. I don't really know the difference, to be honest. I'm not that much aware.
Okay, so that's our beautiful British public, and of course those are the challenges we face. And you know, those sort of issues that are relayed there are relayed also in your own family. You know, my own daughter's expressed many of the views there, and when you're sort of chair of the OTB, trying to get your message to your child, you know, it's quite a challenge. So we also face a fairly hostile environment. There was a lot of growth up until the late 1990s, and then the wheels came off. We had a recession. Retailers lifted up their skirts and ran for the hills, and we lost loads of distribution. We're faced with quite a sceptical press. And organic faced a number of competitive labels such as fair trade, and we got mixed up with things like air miles and local and slow food. God, it was an absolute mess. So we had to make sure that we needed a clear message to cut through. The other thing that was the problem was that prior to Haygarth taking on this role, we were facing a decline in the issues, people's concerns about things they really should be concerned, you know, animal welfare, whether things were free range, British origin, all of these people didn't care about food. It was less of an important thing. What they put on their plate didn't matter to them. I suspect this week those views have probably changed somewhat, and we may benefit from that in the long term. But the other interesting thing was, you can see some of the top things there: animal welfare, free range, all of those things are integral to organic. That is basically what organic is. And yet there was no link to organic. You can see how organic scores right down the bottom there. So people not making the connection with the values that they held and associating that with organic. And in terms of penetration, we had falling household penetration, largely led by distribution, but also changes in consumer perceptions. But I would like to say our decline has levelled out, and we are now starting to see a return to growth in certain areas, largely the result of the work that Haygarth has been doing over the last couple of years. So we are very confident about the future, and we're still on that buying agenda, very importantly. So we have a lot to offer our retail customers and the consumer. Now, what's been very important is to hang on to our two main groups, and we call them our regular purchases. Now, these guys here and the occasional buyers, 20% of our audience buy something like 75% of all our organic foods. So it's absolutely critical that we maintained our interface with them and help to develop them. Who are our organic consumers? Well, actually, they're pretty much one and the same people, you know, like yourself in this room. You're all probably of the same educational level, income brackets, all that sort of thing. And yet one of you has made the connection with organic food, and the person sitting next to you is not. So you're sitting in the same room, you're on the same streets, you occupy the same spaces, but they are, you know, it's difficult making that swap across and moving people into organic. All right? And when we ran the campaign, which Sophie will talk about, we did concentrate mostly on London and the South East. That's where our main target audience was. But I would have liked to say that organic isn't just for sort of Chelsea tractor driving people. It's actually also relevant for people who shop in Asda and who go to farmers markets. Organic food is for everyone, and this is one of the messages we want to get through. It's not a privilege, it's a right, and we want to make organic food accessible for everyone. And I'll leave you now with Sophie to talk about our campaign.
Thanks, Paul. So you can see we had quite a few challenges. We've got decline in interest, decline in penetration, and actually the overall annual spend for OTB is about £600,000. So whilst that's not an insubstantial budget, it's not huge. So we had to be smart in the way that we thought. So just in terms of the objectives, the main objectives were obviously to drive sales. But actually, it's interesting, I think Luke talked about sort of connection and disruption, and actually that was sort of key to what we were trying to do. We had to have a single-minded message that would actually create conversation. In terms of that single-minded message, it wasn't as easy as it looked, because actually there's no one reason that converts people to purchase over others in terms of all the reasons to buy organic. So we had to sort of think about how we were going to pull together the campaign. And actually, where we focused on was about being natural, because actually, if you think about all of the categories on organic, you're talking about meat, you're talking about dairy, you're talking about fruit and veg food, we had to have something that was common to them all. But actually, the most important outtake was that we wanted to think about, get people to sort of stop and think about where their food's coming from, and actually, therefore, start talking about it as well. So we had a whole raft of activity that we did, and I'm going to talk to you specifically about 4 and 5 in terms of how we use social and digital to drive community, create community and drive advocacy. But just before I do that, here's a sort of film that summarises the wider campaign. Okay, so you can see it's kind of a multi-tier campaign, and essentially we had press ads, cross-track press ads in the London Underground targeting South East. So actually the role of social and digital was to give campaign national amplification. But I think that also the main point was about creating community, and we were just talking before we started, and community is a much used word, and we were saying that actually how we would define community is when people talk to each other rather than you talking to them. So that's something that a lot of the speakers have been talking about today. So I'm going to talk about how we've done that. I think the main thing that when we were thinking about the sort of consumer journey and the balance of media was the balance between bought and earned. And one of the themes you'll see is how actually we've really linked PR and social absolutely together. And you know, like a lot of agencies, Haygarth now has one team, and that has made a lot of difference in our ability to think about our content and publishing strategy. So in terms of Facebook was absolutely going to be the home of the community, but both channels of earned and bought drove through to that space. In terms of our social strategy, we had to get a robust community, we had to create conversation, and we had to amplify the above the line, because otherwise it was just going to be the people taking the tube to work on a Monday morning who were going to see it. So I think Luke talked about brands finding a voice, and I'm sure a lot of you do this already, but we really thought quite hard about what our content pillars were going to be so that we created consistency. So the main ones that you'll see through the activity were inspiration of food. Our audience are a naturally foodie bunch. They want that inspiration. We use the news agenda a lot, and you'll see that come through, and that's where we tied in the PR a huge amount. Debate and conversation is what drove the community, and actually one of the things that OTB have been very brave about, and we're pleased about as an agency, is that again, somebody talked about being authentic. We haven't shied away from the criticism. Actually, we've embraced it, and we've driven a lot of conversation, and you'll see that in some of the activity that we've done. And then, obviously, what we wanted was to use the creative assets of the Above the Line campaign as content as well, because we had to get that scale going. So those are the content pillars, and I think it's very easy for us all to rush into campaigns without putting proper thought into what those pillars should be, and then you, in a way, have a filter and a checklist with your tone of voice that makes your activity come to life. In terms of building the community, we started 50% of our... I'm slightly embarrassed of my 50,000 fans after the 22 million that John talked about earlier, but I think if you put it in context, when Yo Valley was on telly, when the X Factor, they had 21,000. So organic is unusual because it's it's not a brand in itself, it's a way that you buy food. But 50,000 for us is quite good, and those who work on FMCG brands, you know that too. So half of those people came through online Facebook advertising, and we only spent about £2,500 a month actually. So not a huge amount, and we deliberately targeted quite a broad interest category. And actually we went from a standing start in 6 months to over 50,000, which is pretty good going. The other 50% came through direct traffic, through some of our partners, and also through some of the shareability and content. In terms of Facebook, the main aspect, I think, as we all know, is about engagement these days. And the average over the last 6 months has been 12%. And again, for those of you who work on normal brands, you're quite happy when it's about 3 to 5%. Luke, I don't know if there are any kind of average stats, but 12% shows a high level of engagement. And actually, when we launched the campaign, we had over 20%. So, you know, we've had times where we've had more talkability and engagement than fans on the actual Facebook page itself. One of the most successful things we did was we partnered with, we had a partnership with Mumsnet. It was a month's campaign. We joined with them because they've got obviously an ABC One audience, which was quite important for our regulars, and also 30% of organic consumers have children in the household. So the partnership we had with them was we had sponsored conversation threads, we had banner advertising, and we had hosted a debate, which I'll show you in a minute, which the Mumsnet had a microsite. I think what was quite interesting about it was back to the community, that when we started the conversation, we thought we were going to have to join in all the time. We didn't actually join in, because actually we asked people what they thought about organic, we posted different questions, and then what we saw was actually the Mumsnet members started representing what we would say anyway, which was a very good position to be in. So again, 320 posts might not sound large, but on average a campaign is about 150. So again, it showed that people have got passion, and the fact that we were willing to let go and watch rather than interfere all the time was a sort of a good point for us, because back to the point that other people are going to believe other people rather than believing us all of the time. The microsite that the Mumsnet people went to showed the film of a debate that we'd hosted, which we'd asked journalists and trade people to. It was hosted by my childhood hero, John Craven. And we had a real mix of people. So we had DeBelle, who's a Mercury Prize-winning rapper. We had Craig Sams, who's the founder of Green and Blacks. But we also had a couple of very cynical journalists saying why they thought organic, wasn't worth it. So again, we embraced the debate, and it was hosted by Miss Marmite Lover, who's a Supper Club founder and blogger as well. So again, what we were doing was putting together an event, PR, and then amplifying it through digital and social, and then it created the content of the debate on Mumsnet. So one of the learnings for me is really never have anything in isolation, always make it link through the line with the rest of your activity. We've sustained debate by constantly asking questions and not shying away from letting people say what they think. In terms of posts, again, listening to some of the earlier speakers, it was quite interesting about the balance of entertainment, because actually organic can become incredibly worthy and a little bit, woolly jumper-like. So we've tried to keep the balance between serious message and entertaining content about right. So you can see a combination there of, talking about what ministers have said that week in the press, through to a sort of small, quite shareable visual asset. So we've managed to try and keep the balance right, but they're all based on our kind of core pillars. In terms of bloggers, they've proved very important again, and again, I think that Facebook can be a very good central point of community, but you need to have a multi-touch point strategy. So we targeted all the parenting food bloggers. We took some of the bloggers down on a press media visit down to Helen Browning's farm so that they could experience organic direct. We've had a partnership with Lavender and Loveridge, which is the largest food blogger, is the #1 food blogger in the UK, for the last 8 months, where she has created organic recipes with on a thrifty budget, and then we've been able to use that content on Facebook and share it, and then get our members to share it as well. So I think that the the role of PR and bloggers are incredibly important because also they drive direct traffic as well. And same with Twitter. Again, when we're in the news and we've had press releases, this was on food wastage, we've then used Twitter to amplify through what's been happening on PR. I think that in terms of having a creative campaign, I'd love to say this was completely by design. I think I'll pretend it was. We designed a creative campaign that was then usable online because actually it's quite fun, it's quite engaging, it's conversational, and actually just by having the chickens and the plums and the characters, we could actually use them as content as well, which has helped actually create this sort of national awareness. So I think that's a bit of an overview. In terms of what we've achieved, actually through Leapfrog research, we know that the campaign has been delivering a single-minded message, and as Paul said, the sales have started to decline. Interestingly, I haven't talked about it today, we've done some online partnerships with retailers, and we've seen massive impact on sales by having our creative next to, in the right places on retail promotions. In terms of results, these are more numbers-led really, but in terms of where we've set KPIs on engagement or OTS or positivity of coverage, we've outperformed them. And also the media spend has been pretty cost effective, bearing in mind that we've got quite a tight budget. I think just to sort of finish off, I'm conscious of time, I think there were some key things that I sort of wanted to pull out that have been kind of factors of success. The fact that we've created a community, not a crowd, has made a big difference because they are the people who have amplified the message through. So don't just focus on the numbers, do think about the quality of those people as well. I think that we've balanced the combination of bought and earned well, and I think that's been a good factor because I think that the earned media has given us that credibility and the authenticity that sometimes bought doesn't. Digital and social have allowed us to reach beyond the immediate traditional London and South East spend. The fact that we've had PR and social working absolutely together has made a massive difference. And I know it sounds an obvious thing to say, but we work with a lot of cross-agency groups as well, which is fantastic. And I'm not sure we always, as an industry, join up the dots as best we can. And I think that working with our partners, whether we're media partners, and also Paul mentioned some of the members we have, obviously what we've done is we've shared their tweets, they've shared ours. It's been quite a sort of symbiotic relationship that we've had. And then finally, getting the balance right of entertainment as well as message delivery has been quite key. We've made it easy. Most of our posts are visual and or very immediately shareable, especially when we're talking about news. So that creates that ripple effect. And then the news agenda and the sparking debate are intrinsically linked. We've ridden the national agenda, and we haven't been afraid to jump in sometimes, even when it wasn't completely what we wanted them to say. But it means that we've been fan-centric. We've been thinking about what our community wants to hear rather than what we want to say all of the time. And actually, again, somebody earlier talked about heavyweight and lightweight. You have to be incredibly nimble. And, we listen, often the team will be coming in the morning and we'll have something online that's been on BBC Breakfast or on Radio 4, etc. By, 8:30 in the morning. And then it creates debate for the rest of the day. So be quick and be agile. So guys, that was a bit of a kind of quick summary of the campaign, but I hope it's been useful because I suspect that I haven't necessarily told you something that you don't know in itself, but it's more thinking about the broader picture and how you can make social work within a wider campaign. Thanks very much.